Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, everyone in the BKCO network. Welcome to our monthly BKCO network call. I am filling in for Lena Truhoff today because she is losing her voice and we're going to cut her a little bit of slack. Is everybody okay with that? We hope you feel better soon, Lena. All right, folks, let's start out with some good news. Whether you want to share in the chat or unmute, who's got some good news to share? I know somebody's got something.
I had a walkthrough yesterday and we're going to put the house on the market in May.
That's fantastic. I remember talking to you about that listing appointment yesterday. Congratulations.
Yep. Thank you.
Anybody got any new listings they're excited about?
I don't have a new listing, but went pending on a home just yesterday. It was one that the seller wanted to hold through the weekend on our offer, and that didn't work out for him. So we came back at our original offer, and he signed it. So we got an extra 10K off what he was wanting to do.
That's fantastic. Hey, just out of curiosity, where did you find the customer?
It was from a lady that I had spoken to years ago, and that was through one of the online, referral apps. And it was her mother that gave me a call to say her daughter wanted to buy.
Most excellent. Thank you for sharing. Shay, it
Up
looks like
City.
you
It was Up City was the original way I met the lady.
from Op City. Got it. Thanks for sharing. Shay, congrats on the pending. I don't know if you can unmute. You might be at work, but where'd you get the client from if you can't speak up? Nope. Kelly Black, 3 pendings, 1 new listing. That's a referral. They're all referrals and a referral from a past client. That is fantastic, Kelly.
Oh,
And it looks like
I can unmute.
great.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You wanted to my pending. It's a investor client that I've been working with, so that's how I found that buyer.
Most excellent. Thank you. Okay, we'll keep going. Announcements. Lena, cruising right past that. Okay, guys, our February stat graphics are available today. You should see those arriving in your email inbox. These are great for sharing on social media or sharing with your clients, and that's why we put them together every month. And Ignite is still going on. So that's going all on until the 23rd. Guys, even if you're not a brand new agent, this is a great series to attend if you want to get a reboot and just get the whole 360-degree education around how to build a real estate business. And call to play, win the day. Jason Abrams coming to the Seattle area. This is actually sold out. You can scan and get on a waiting list. And I know they did change locations, so let's hope that some spots open up because Jason Abrams never comes here, and we're really excited to have him. And of course, we want to remind you guys, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, a wonderful opportunity for you every single weekday morning is to hop on a half-an-hour call with Sydney and work on your conversations. Sydney's integrating exactly what to say curriculum into these conversations. If you haven't attended one of these, I really, really recommend that you jump on one of these mornings and you'll find out that it's a great use of your time and a great way to start the day. And of course, every Thursday, our Rising Tides Coffee Club, hosted by Lena Truhoff, basically a weekly mastermind where people can hop on, people from KW, people from elsewhere, and just talk about whatever the topic is right now. And Lena says they've been really, really fun, and that's what I've been hearing as well. And whenever I join, it's fantastic. And you guys may have noticed that Tech Thursday is back. Thank you, JC, for putting this on with consistency. It looks like our next one is going to be pretty simple, how to create a booking link using Gmail so you don't have to pay for software like Calendly, how to make your email signature look fantastic, and also how to use the new incoming Atom brand code that every agent here is going to have access to help you create more exposure through automatic AI-produced graphic design. And we have a brand new video library on the hub. We have new videos uploading weekly, a great place to dive in and see all the training that we have to offer here in the network. And the Working Moms Collective. This is Elena's business child, but this is obviously targeted towards working moms. The monthly Zoom is a great place for working moms to get together and talk about their businesses and their lives and get support from each other. And this month, we're going to be talking about tax tips and tax hacks. And that should be a really, really interesting one. Thanks for putting that on, Lena. And just want to remind you guys, if you want to scan this code, this will give you 100+ business building prompts to use in your preferred version of AI. I'll remind everybody that as of now, KW agents have access to Gemini Pro for free. Use these prompts. They're super, super helpful. And we just want to remind you guys that we are always, always recruiting to our leadership. And, even if we don't have an open position, we want to build a nice bench so that we have great options to provide you guys for support while you're working on your businesses. All right, time for the mortgage spotlight. What is up, JC?
Hey, Jordan.
Oh, I saw JC's face, but it's Jen.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna tag team it. Jen's gonna go first.
Tag team it. All right.
I'll do the second part. So kick it away, Jen.
Yeah, you got both of us today.
No trouble.
Just as a reminder, everyone on the call, thank you for joining us, of course, and taking time out of your day. JC and I both are your envoy representatives for the Keller Williams Brokerages. We'll drop our contact info in the chat for those of you who don't have it already. Another reminder is we send out emails every week, not only to our agent partners, but our clients as well, who are in turn your clients. So make sure that we have your updated contact info. Make sure that you're getting those weekly market update emails from us. If you're not, please reach out or shoot your email in the chat and we will make sure that it gets updated. This week, so it's been a little crazy in general, but rates have held pretty strong in the low 6% range. The big theme this week is volatility. So it's been a little choppy with the things going on that we know about. At the same time, though, you guys, buyer demand is picking up. We've seen an increase in purchase applications week over week. We're on our 8th straight week of year-over-year growth in our purchase applications, which is obviously telling us that buyers are back. But inventory isn't growing with it. I don't know if you guys are noticing that. These are, of course, national stats, but supplies tightened a little last week with new listings remaining limited. So the setup for early spring competition, the rising demand is meeting flat supply. So one of the things that I really wanted to touch on before we get into the slides is we do have products to help your buyers stay competitive. If we have a long enough runway, if we're prepared with their file, we can get them pre-underwritten before they go under contract. That alone will make them competitive. The other thing we can do is we can initiate our product called Cash Edge. That is basically a cash-backed offer that you can provide for your clients. We need to do a little upfront work, of course, together, but that once they get through that process, they can essentially make offers as if they're cash. This is something that I have used a lot, specifically in the King County area. So if you have any questions about that, reach out to us. We're happy to help. Let's see here. Pre-underwritten, the same as pre-approved. So when we do a pre-approval, we are looking at, JC and I both, we review all the documentation, we review their credit report, and we run it through our automated underwriting system. So they are pre-approved. Pre-underwritten means that an underwriter, we've submitted the file after we pre-approve them to our underwriting department. This allows an underwriter to look at the application and ask any questions that they may once that client does go under contract. So we're able to maybe if they're, I do this a lot with self-employed borrowers just to make sure we have the income dialed in correctly. And also the underwriter is familiar with the file. So one of the really key benefits to getting pre-underwritten is once that client goes under contract, that file goes back to that same underwriter. So they're already familiar with the file. A lot of times we can cut down on our close dates as well, making it even more competitive. And it really eliminates any turbulence that might come up during the time of contract to close. I'll pass it to you, JC.
All right, great. So let's go ahead and pull up some slides. Can you guys see my screen? Great. Awesome. Terrific. So, yeah, let's go ahead and dive in a little bit more into the headlines like Jennifer was mentioning at the beginning, right? And definitely want to address some of these things because these are for sure the conversations that we're having with our clients, right? I myself, the last week or so, have been talking so much about things like oil. We're all oil experts all of a sudden, right? Because of what's happening in the Middle East. But that's something that we're definitely talking about since it's having an impact on interest rates, right? So there's a lot of visibility out there, but like Jen was saying, volatility is for sure something that is very well alive and present in our market right now. It's impacting interest rates. So it's going to be important for us to be in touch with our clients. Just remind them, hey, we cannot predict exactly what the future is going to look like, but what we can do is we can be more proactive to try and manage some of that volatility at the best we can, right? And some of that relates to, while we can't tell you exactly what rates will be in 6 months or 12 months from now, we can tell you what rates are now, and we can give you some options based off of that, right? So just some important things to keep in mind. And the same thing that Jennifer was saying, inventory is not keeping up with the current demand year over year. So as the demand continues to increase and inventory just kind of flats out, that's going to mean less opportunities moving forward or harsher and more competitive competition for the inventory that is out there, right? So that's just some of the things that are happening. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the talking points, right, that we can share with our clients and how we can maybe motivate them to get some sort of scenarios or some numbers figured out, right? So always a good reminder to let them know that 65% of home appreciation happens in the months of April, May, and June. And I bring this up quite often because there's a lot of people that I still hear say, I'm going to wait on my buying plans 2, 3, 4 months down the road, which I think is totally fine. But sometimes we don't realize the implications of us kind of sitting on the sidelines while inventory continues to appreciate, right? So would you rather buy the home at today's price or at a higher price a few months later down the road, right? Another thing that we want to share with you guys as well is we revamped our buy before you sell calculator. So if you go to the Envoy website, now you guys can find this new polished version of our buy before you sell. I'm sorry, of the cost of waiting calculator, not buy before you sell, cost of waiting. And this is what you would plug in information to come up with a scenario of what it would cost a client to wait and buy the same home 6 months later, a year later, depending on what they think is going to happen with interest rates. One of the biggest changes that we have on this calculator now, you guys, is when we first rolled out this calculator, we meant it with the intent to show people of how perhaps waiting for a lower interest rate in the future might not work out in the way that they were hoping if there were other factors such as home appreciation, higher fees, and lost equity, right? Because if you buy a home at a higher price a year from now, the interest rate that you were hoping to get might not be as relevant as that you thought it would have been, right? So one of the changes that we did on the cost of waiting calculator is that now on the bottom line where it says potential interest rate change, we've updated that. And now we will give people the ability to factor in maybe rate doesn't go down more than it is already now. Maybe rates are going to be a little bit higher a year from now, right? And not saying that that necessarily will be the case, but I think when we are interacting with all of this volatility, we have to be open to the possibilities that that could happen. And we just have to show people either scenario, right? If rates go down, great, this is what you've got to gain. But if rates go up, this is how it could affect you to wait and hold on buying next year, right? Because while rates are kind of an uncertain thing, appreciation is something that we can pretty much bet on. And that is something that we want to focus on. Focus on what we can control and what we are confident that will happen eventually, right? So want to share this with you guys. And if you need help plugging in scenarios, either reach out to Jen or myself. We're happy to walk you through any scenarios that you guys want to present to your clients, okay? And the last thing that I wanted to close out with is, I don't know if you guys heard about this news, but officially last week, the trigger lead has been put to a stop, to a hold. And for those of you not familiar, I know, right? Big celebration. For those of you that are not familiar with the trigger lead is, that meant that when we would pull a client's credit to help them get pre-approved, that would allow credit bureaus to sell off that trigger to other mortgage companies. And as a result, our clients would get just, bombarded with calls left and right, trying to offer them, a lower rate or lower fees or whatever they thought was of value to the client, right? And this is a big win for the entire industry because I cannot tell you guys how many calls I would get from my clients just being so upset, very frustrated that they did not authorize all these, 10, 20. I think the maximum that I heard from somebody was like 45 calls from 45 different banks. And in my opinion, that is not the right experience that we want to give our clients. I am very happy that that for once has come to an end. There are some exceptions to the rule from what I read, as in if somebody already has an established banking relationship with an institution, they might still get some marketing calls from them, but it's not going to be like it was a few weeks ago where the entire world was calling you when you got your credit pulled. So feel free to share the good news with your clients. I think that we can all benefit from this for sure.
Oh my gosh, you guys, the one time I didn't warn a client, it was my mother, and she got 30 calls the next day. I'll never live that one down. So,
Good.
but you can also get on the donotcall.gov. And the other thing too, you guys to keep in mind, I know one of my biggest objections is, oh, I don't want my credit pulled. I'm not ready. And okay, great. Well, we can do a soft pull on your credit. It's not going to hurt anything. And it'll give us enough information to accurately advise you. So that in itself has eliminated so many objections and gotten people off the fence. It's almost like just an automated like, no, I don't want my credit pulled. Nobody wants their credit pulled, right? But a lot of times it can open up a lot of conversations around the fact that you might actually be ready now. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they're like, I mean, JC probably same, where they're like, oh, I'm just interested and not necessarily looking to do anything anytime soon, or, my timeline's next year, and then we accurately advise them on what their options could be because we have the information we need, and they go under contract in the next 30 days. So
we had one question in the chat, Jen. It says, does that increase the cost of pulling credit for the clients? Heard that credit record costs went up a few $100s.
Not on our end, a few $100s. No. Nope.
Great. Well, awesome. Is that everything you guys got for us today?
That's all we got.
That's
Wonderful.
it.
Thanks so much, guys. Up next, David Monroe with our regional market update. Hey, David.
Hey. So I have a few stats that I go over each month that is complementary to the stats that you receive through the network. So just want to let you know, this does not replace the stats that you get each month. This is just on top of it. This is some of the information. Some of this is a little bit more difficult to pull up because there aren't reports or graphs already for this. So that's why I choose to do some of this as well too. So to start out with, let's look at days on market, how we're faring as a region. I track 8 counties, the primary 8 counties we tend to work in. And if you look at the days on market for closed transactions on the left, 56 days, this is what is generally reported throughout the industry. This is what you get on Trend Graphics. This is what you get on InfoSparks and other stats, right? It's the average days on market for closed transactions. So the issue with this is that this is starting to become old data. So when we look at February days on market based on closed transactions, that's telling us more of what happened like in January, because that's actually when it went pending and then it had to take the time to close. So we also track the average days on market for pending transactions. This is more of a leading indicator rather than a lagging indicator. So you can see the trend is going down right now. We're 50 days on market for transactions that went pending in February across our region. And that's down 12 days from the month before. So then we look at the percentage of listings that went pending in 7 days or less, 40%. So 4 out of 10 listings that went on the market in February went pending in 7 days or less. Does that surprise anyone? I think what happens is our market tends to be a little bit segmented, right? There are some areas where properties feel like they're staying on the market forever, and some areas some small areas where properties are flying off the market. But to be looking at February, that 40% went pending in 7 days or less is pretty decent. That's up 7% from January. But then we look at that other group. What about the ones that didn't go pending in the first 7 days? How long did they stay on market on average? The average days on market for listings that did not sell in the first 7 days was 81 days. So think about this. Think about how big of a difference that is from that 50, right? So think of the conversation that you might be having with a seller that wants to test the market by pricing a little bit high, right? Because if they're not one of the 40% that sells within the first 7 days, they'll be in the other 60% group that has an average days on market of 81 days instead. So great conversation to have with the seller, but also too with the buyer that might be struggling to find something. Maybe they're shopping in a pretty hot area and they're having trouble finding something. Just know that once it's been on the market more than 7 days, it's a whole different game, right? And 60% of the listings out there have been on the market for more than 7 days. So it gives buyers some additional opportunity there. Make sense? Okay. Okay, so I like to track transactions that terminated. And the reason for this is we've always kind of gone by a default when forecasting to figure that 90% of transactions will close. 90% of transactions that go pending will close. Well, we see in our market right now and over these last few years, that's not necessarily the case. See, right now, as of February, 13% of transactions that went pending failed to close. They actually fell out of contract, 13%. And I marked the winter periods versus the spring period because here you can see what happens is when we're in the winter and buyers feel like the market's a little bit slower, well, everyone feels like the market's a little bit slower in the winter, the percentage of transactions that terminate are higher than the spring months. And so when you look at this, we're kind of right in the bottom, about 13% as we run into this spring. And so we can predict as we move through the spring, as long as there aren't any major economic events that are negative, we'll probably be at 13, 14, 12% of transactions being terminated. So this is important to forecast, but also note too on that box on the bottom right, of the transactions, of that 13%, of the transactions that were terminated, the average days on market for that group was 77 days, which is well above the 50 days on market for transactions that went pending that same month. So the message to sellers is, again, a days on market thing. The longer your listing stays on the market, the higher the likelihood is that when you do get it under contract, that it would fall through. There's a higher risk, right? Because we're seeing the ones that are falling through tend to have a longer days on market on average, right? So that's some of the messaging that we would have for sellers on that. Okay, let's hit the next one. So the pending transaction insights. This actually comes straight from NWMLS, so we all have access to that, even for your specific county. This is the 8 counties combined. 29% of listings had multiple offers last month. So 1 out of 3 had multiple offers. We saw 1 out of 4 sold within the first 7 days. Basically 1 out of 3 roughly had multiple offers. 3 out of 10. And actually, I meant 4 out of 10, not 1 out of 4 on the other one. So 29% had multiple offers, 9% had an escalation addendum. Now, that number is a little bit misleading, possibly because a lot of times the escalation addendum comes off during negotiations and it goes pending without an escalation addendum. So there might have been 25% that started with an escalation addendum and ended up with 9%. But 57% had an inspection addendum. So that's about what would be expected for this time of year. 57% based on, and I'd say based on our current market right now too, because if it was a lot harder, we see that number be a lot smaller, right? And then 78%, a little over 3/4, had a financing addendum. So still a pretty high percentage of buyers that are getting financing and having a financing addendum, because we can figure that there's probably a tiny percentage that are getting financing but have waived the financing contingency, right? And then the current pending price to list price ratio, I'll say really for February, was 100%. Across our region, the average pending price to list price ratio is 100%, which is pretty solid for this time of year. So we just see, our transaction count is down, but most of the other metrics for our market are looking pretty healthy, other than just the transaction count being low. All right. Okay, so median price. This is to just give you a little bit of a forecast of what is likely to happen and what it means as well too. So typically as we go through the winter, median price drops for most areas, even in a hot market. Median price drops with it bottoming out in January. January median price represents what happened in December, because this is on closed transactions. So January bottoming out on median price means December is where the market really bottomed out. However, that doesn't mean necessarily that home values had dropped. And so it represents a shift in the buyers that were buying, in the price points that buyers are buying it. So typically in the winter, in most areas, the lower price point homes sell faster and becomes a higher percentage of the overall sales for the market. As we get past the beginning of the year and especially into spring, a lot of the higher priced buyers come out in higher numbers. And then that starts to make a swing in terms of the higher percentage of the transactions being higher priced transactions. So if you look at last year, so we're about even with last year in terms of median price, when you look at February and February, right? But then last year we saw that it went up from 700 to 725 to 742. So it went from 700 to 742 in 2 months. But I can pretty much assure you that values did not increase by whatever that is, 6% in 2 months. Now, it might have increased by some number, 1, 2, 3%. But what that shows is that it shows the higher price point buyers coming out in bigger numbers. And so more of the higher price homes start selling that had been sitting on the market during the winter. So that's what we can expect too. So the reason that's important to understand is because we're going to see this go from $699 on that very right side up to low 700s and then mid 700s from there for our region. But understand that doesn't mean houses are getting that much more expensive for buyers. That's what's important to understand. All right. All right. Let's go on to the next one. So lastly, just wanted to remind everybody that the productivity coaching programs throughout the network, we have an open house certification program and a showing agent certification program. And people who have gone through this training and pass a test and become certified end up on a list. This is how you access the list of certified open house agents throughout the network. and certified showing agents throughout the network. And since we have offices from Lacey to Bellingham, this list contains agents that are certified throughout that whole I-5 corridor. So if you need someone to show a home, it's not in your area, you have a listing that's not in your area, you want someone to hold an open house, or even is in your area and you don't want to hold it yourself, you can get certified agents off of this list. And by the way, we like to monitor how they're doing as well too. So any feedback, good or bad, I would love to hear directly on this too. And that's all I have.
It's fantastic. I use open house agents and home showing agents off of this list all the time. And we know at Keller Williams that scaling, right, using leverage is a part of growing your business. And having people go out and show homes for you while you're lead generating is a great example of that. And David's made it really, really easy for you to find leverage. So thank you for that, David.
Okay.
All right. Is it me now? Yes, the answer is yes. Let me just get my slide set up really quick here, guys. And while I'm doing that, I'll just ask the question. Who out here would like to have better outcomes from their conversations with prospects and clients? Put it in the chat. At least one person does. Oops. Just a second while I get my slides set up here, guys. There we go. Okay. All right, folks. We are in a period of change right now, right? There's changing results, changing outcomes, and we're even changing our technology platforms, right? We're on Zoom right now. We're not in person. And in this newer environment, like how we listen has changed as well. We listen with our eyes and our ears, but we also listen with our fingers. So to prove to me that you're listening with your fingers, find the chat right now and tell me whether or not you have read or listened to the book Exactly What to Say. Lena has. Not yet. Both. Yes. No, yes, I have partially. Well, here's an important thing to know about that book. One, it's only 2 hours to listen to. So I really, really highly encourage you guys to get on Amazon.com, look up Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents and download that book. It's only 2 hours. So just an easy exercise to start out with. Just do me a favor, folks, and just fold your arms. And I can see whether or not some of you are doing it. Now, I didn't mean that way. Like fold your arms like the other way. Feels freaking weird and uncomfortable, right? And this is literally probably the simplest change I can ask of you. But it proves that any change we ask of ourselves or our customer at best is pretty uncomfortable. So our job is to be the person that guides them through that discomfort. So let's just look at why change is hard. When you hear the words stereotypical salesperson, what adjectives come to mind? Drop them in the chat. Commission breath. Pushy. Pushy. Jordan. Thanks a lot, Tim. I know that's you. Pushy, not a listener, right? We see the same list every single time. Pushy, sleazy, manipulative. This is the label that creates resistance before you even open your mouth. So if someone used those words to describe you, I'm assuming you would feel a little bit less than ideal. So let's flip it. Professional sales. What if I change that one word to professional salesperson? What adjectives apply now? Put them in the chat. I'm not going to keep going till Tim. I was going to say I'm not going to keep going till someone puts something in the chat. Ask questions and listens well. Passionate, courteous, sharp, guru, helpful, right? We hear the same things. Listener, helpful, expert, problem solver. Notice how the entire energy in your mind just shifted. You didn't really change anything but one word. When we changed one word, stereotypical to professional, we changed all the words. Your brain was forced to find the data that matched that label. Word choices influence the behavior of others more than you've ever given them credit for. So being a salesperson isn't a bad thing. It's the perception. It's the perception of being a salesperson. We're not looking for applause for our sales skills. What we're looking for is to receive the words, thank you, much more often. Everybody is in the business of influence. Whether you're selling a product to a client or bedtime to your 3-year-old, you're in the business of moving people to action. So what does a 3-year-old do when they want a cookie? Right? They ask again, and they ask again. They pivot, they ask again. They don't fear the no because they haven't learned any of the stereotypes yet, right? As adults, we stop. We hear echoes in our minds that it's rude to ask, or I don't want to be pushy, and we lose the innate courage we were born with. Remember, your success is in direct correlation to the quantity of quality asks that you make. If you do not ask, you will not receive. So that moves us to the first cornerstone of conversational excellence. So when you read exactly what to say, it's a 2-hour book, and it's only 2 hours for a reason. It's got a bunch of examples of words that we can use. When you go through the exactly what to say certification and training, you learn the theory, and that starts with the 4 cornerstones, right? So we just defined what it means to be professional. So let me ask you, is it professional to show up to a conversation with a prospect or a client and not be fully prepared? The answer is no, right? But we do it all the time. We try to wing it. We use our natural talent. But in reality, winging it is a breach of professional integrity. And on top of that, people can tell when you're not prepared. They can see it in your body language, right? They hear it in your tone. When you lack certainty, you leak nervous energy. So the prospect's subconscious brain picks up on that and asks really just one question. Am I safe with this person? The moment they ask themselves that, the trust stops. They stop giving you the truth and they start giving you polite lies to get off the phone or end the conversation. So look at the slide. The worst time to think about the thing you are saying is in the moment you are saying it. Under the pressure of a live conversation, your brain's going to default to safety, not strategy. And if you haven't decided the words before the pressure hits, you're going to default to your oldest, least effective habits, right? Professionals don't debrief. They don't go shoulda, woulda, coulda after a conversation. They pre-brief. They decide the outcome before the microphone is even turned on. Which leads us to the next cornerstone. Curiosity is the fuel for great conversations. Okay? So think of every conversation like a high-performance engine. Curiosity is the fuel. If you show up with assumptions or certainty or I already know what they need, that is the wrong fuel. The engine will cough, it will stall, and it will die. And the thing is, most of us are addicted to giving advice. We think being a professional means having all the answers. But when you lead with answers, you stop being curious. And if you stay curious for even just 60 seconds longer than you feel comfortable, you will find that the real data that changes the outcome starts to surface. So a professional doesn't show up to tell, a professional shows up to find out. Curiosity is the only way to earn the right to lead the conversation later. Let's look at this practically. This is our curiosity to courage triangle, right? Trust is not a feeling, it's a math equation, right? Curiosity plus empathy equals trust. And you cannot get to the top of this triangle without doing the heavy lifting at the base, right? So let me ask you this, and I'd love to see some answers in the chat on this one. What is the definition of empathy? Cato North Sound. Anybody got one for me? Anybody want to unmute and just tell me what they think empathy is?
Caring about what other people care about.
Oh, she's been in the class. That's Kim. I recognize your voice anywhere. Showing that you care. Thank you, Kim. So empathy is caring about what other people care about, right? So here's the logic check, right? We come to a conversation with curiosity. And that gives us the data that we need to be certain. And when we understand, if we're certain what people care about, that allows us to actually practice empathy with them, right? And when you practice empathy with somebody, it gives you relatability. And once you have enough rapport, relatability, and trust, it gives you the courage that you've deserved to take action. So here's a logic check. Are you even capable of practicing empathy, caring about what someone else cares about, if you don't actually know what they care about yet? The answer is no. If you haven't done the work of curiosity, your empathy is just a performance and it's fake. So if you try to skip straight to empathy before you've shown them that you know them through curiosity, what happens? They lose trust. They feel handled. You can't skip steps in this triangle, right? You come to a conversation and you use curiosity to get certainty about what they care about. And once you're certain what they care about, you're able to practice empathy. And once you're able to practice empathy with somebody, real, true empathy, it gives you relatability. And then from there, you build enough rapport to take action and make the ask. Phil always says, slow things down to speed things up. And the Navy SEALs have a similar saying. They say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So what are they talking about? They're simply talking about understanding that if you spend the right amount of time at the beginning of the triangle, asking the questions, gathering the data, building the foundation, the outcome, the action will actually happen faster and with less resistance. So once you have the fuel, curiosity, and the connection, empathy, then you go to courage. Courage is the ability to make a big, bold ask. And if you jump straight to courage without curiosity, you're stereotypical. If you use all three in order, you're professional. Curiosity, empathy, courage, rinse and repeat. This is the operating system for every critical conversation you'll have later today. So that leads us to the final cornerstone, right? People do things for their own reasons and not yours. Most of us show up to a meeting armed with our reasons, right? We have our features, our benefits, our logic. But here's the hard truth. People do not care about your reasons. They only care about theirs. And if you try to move someone using your logic and your reasons, you're back in that stereotypical channel, right? If you move them with their logic and their reasons, now you're professional. So I want everybody to write this down and live by it for the rest of your career if you can. Okay? Never, ever, ever, ever attempt to give somebody advice unless you can first say, because of the fact that you said beforehand. Because of the fact that you said X, I'm going to recommend Y. If you cannot finish that sentence, it means that you do not have enough data. It means that you are in the trap of giving generic advice, and generic advice is a breach of professional integrity. So what do you do if you can't say because of the fact that you said? You stay curious until you're actually able to say that. You keep asking, you keep digging, and you keep listening until they have handed you the exact data point you need to make the suggestion. This is what empathy actually looks like in action. It's not feeling sorry for them. It's the tactical ability to see the world through their data set so clearly that you can use their own words to lead them to a solution. When you use the phrase, because of the fact that you said, the friction is going to disappear. You're not selling anymore. You're just proving that you listened. It becomes you and me versus the problem because the solution is now based on all of their reasons, not your reasons. So it's you and them versus the problem versus you versus them. So think of a current prospect you're struggling with. Can you say, because of the fact that you said to them right now, before delivering whatever advice that you want to give to them? Because if not, you know exactly what your next step is. Go back and stay curious until you have the data. And the final cornerstone, the person asking the questions controls the conversation, right? We often think that the person speaking is the most in control. It's actually the opposite. So if you're the one providing the data, you are the one being audited. If you were the one asking the questions, you were the one leading the dance. A question is a search query for the human brain. When you ask one, the other person's brain must stop and find an answer. You aren't pushing them. You're basically using questions to install a path that they're following. And just a little bit of technical protocol. If you've been talking for 2 minutes straight, you've probably lost the lead, right? Pull back, ask a curious question, reestablish control by finding more of their data. So let's use the first date analogy for how trust and confidence are built over time, right? So think about this sequence in terms of a relationship, right? You don't meet someone for the first time and ask them to marry you. Actually, that would be stereotypical and frankly, quite terrifying. It starts with questions on a first date, right? Curiosity. And those questions lead to conversations. Those conversations lead to what we call a relationship. And after a long enough time in a relationship, the opportunity for something like marriage presents itself. And then you think about the final step, action. Anybody on this call ever asked somebody to marry them or just been asked to be like, has anyone asked someone to marry them or been asked to get married? And think back on that moment. How confident do you think the asker was? 50%? 50-50 chance she's going to say yes? Right? When they asked for the marriage, they weren't guessing. They were probably 99% sure that the answer was yes before they even opened their mouth. So how did they get that confidence? Through the first four steps, right? They used questions and conversations to gather data. And in business, we can use this exact same sequence to get the same level of confidence with our prospects. If you're nervous about the ask, the action, it's very likely because you haven't asked enough questions at the start. So the takeaway here, don't try to shortcut the math. If you want confidence to take action, stay curious in the questions phase until the data tells you it's safe to move forward. So, since I can't go over all the sequences of words and I can't go all over, 16 hours of training on a call, I did want to put you out with one thing you can use today, right? So we've established that the worst time to think about the thing you are saying is in the moment that you are saying it, right? And I know what you're thinking. What's an easy way to prepare for an open house or a buyer consultation when I haven't gone through the full training yet? So that's exactly what to say question trees are for. Okay, so before we get into the specific words, we need to talk about structure anyway, right? Phil teaches that the person asking the questions is the one that's in control of the conversation, right? These magic words work great in isolation, but even better when methodically used together, and we call those question trees. So a question tree is a stack sequence where every answer provides the context for the next question. You aren't pitching, you're just leading a dance. And I'm going to give you an example here, right? So Phil tells a story from when he was a consultant and he was turning around failing retail furniture stores. And this is one of my favorite stories. The bosses told him, hey, Phil, our team is great at selling sofas, but they can't sell the high margin add-ons. If you can help them sell fabric protection and footstools, we can save the company. So Phil asked the staff, why aren't people buying? And they said, well, for the fabric protection, customers say they don't need it because they are dead careful. They're just really careful with their furniture, right? So that's the known objection, right? We know what objections typically we're going to walk into. And then for the footstools, the prospects would say they don't have space in their house, right? So here's the rule. If a customer says it, it's true. And if you argue, you lose. So Phil realized that he had to steal the matchbox before those people lit the fire, right? He built a question tree that the staff used to ask before the product was ever even mentioned, all right? So let's talk about the furniture, right? And we know that the objection is that they're careful with their furniture. So before this couch protection package is ever brought up, here's the questions that they asked. 1, hey, prospect, so apart from yourself, who's going to be using the furniture, right? They're going to say me, my wife, the kids, right? Maybe the dog, right? Do you guys do a fair amount of entertaining in your living room, right? Everybody said yes. Nobody wants to admit that they don't have any friends. Is it going to be the best room in the house? or is it going to be more of an everyday room, right? And in this case, it doesn't matter if they say it's the best room, the hosting room, and it doesn't matter if they say it's the everyday room, because if it's the best room, they're going to want it to look the best. And if it's the everyday room, and we already know that room takes a hammering, right? Then 4, how long did you keep your last sofa, right? And the customer's typically going to say 10 years, 7 years, whatever. And then we follow up with, well, I guess you're looking for this one to last the same amount of time. Boom. They just admitted that they need fabric protection without the salesperson even saying a thing, right? Now for the footstool, right? What he'd do is he would have them draw out their living room. They'd say, hey, okay, this living room, how big is it, right? And they draw it out, right? Okay. Oh, that's a fair sized room. How you plan on laying it out, right? And he'd ask them to draw the couch, and they'd always draw the couch. They think their living room's freaking huge, so they draw this tiny little couch right here, right? And then the final piece of this, we know the objection is that they say they don't have enough space, right? So the question is, so during Christmas, where do you guys keep your tree, right? And then they draw in where they keep their tree, okay? And then from there, no pitch, right? He already found a home for 11 months out of the year for that footstool, so he just came to this. Because of the fact that you said you want your couch to last 10 years, your whole family's using the room, every once in a while the dog gets in there, you host in there, you know, I think it'd be a really good idea if you took a look at this couch protection package so we can make sure that lasts you that 10 years, right? And the footstool, right? Same kind of thing. He'd ask, you know, do you guys find that in your living room, you're having a hard time finding enough storage for things like blankets and board games and things like that? Everybody always said yes, right? And the footstool opens up, it's got extra storage, right? And you say, well, because of the fact you said you're also looking for extra storage and you might need extra seating when you guys are hosting, maybe you should take a look at this footstool, right? And then the same objection they always got was, well, we're not sure where we're going to keep it. And they say, oh, no worries, you can just keep it wherever you keep your Christmas tree. And sales went from 60% to 95% for those add-ons, right? Because they had questions ready in advance to help people realize that they needed something that they didn't know they needed. So we got 5 minutes left. Let's bring it home. Guys, do you typically know what objections you are going to face? Are they ever a surprise? Maybe once in a while. Never for David Monroe. No, they're almost always the same 3 or 4 hurdles, right? So you can prep for any appointment by putting together these question trees. If you know you're going to hear an objection about interest rates or pricing, don't wait for it to hit you in the moment. Use your tree to plant curiosity questions early that led them to their own conclusions. So your homework is simply this. Identify the top 2 objections that you hear at an open house or in a listing appointment or on the phone, and think of the question you can ask in front of them to just make sure these objections never even come up. So build your tree, stay curious, and earn the thank you. That's all I got for you guys today. You know, just introducing the 4 cornerstones. Like I said, we have 16 hours of training around this. I'm an Exactly What to Say certified guide, and all that really means is that I train directly with Phil Jones, the author of the book and the creator of this curriculum, and he's also my business coach. And I'm going to go train with him in New York for the first week of April. And when I get back, we're going to relaunch this whole training series again. So a couple of the things you can walk away with, okay? First, something that costs no money and very little time. Maybe I should get rid of that. Every single morning at 8:30 on Zoom, Sydney Odingo, productivity coach, is using Exactly What to Say philosophy in these morning critical conversations role plays. This is a half an hour that could be very, very, very valuable to you. And I really encourage you guys to sign in and attend this because it is fantastic. I'll give folks a second to scan that, and then I'll just say one more thing. Lastly, the full curriculum of training. We are doing session 8 on Thursday here in Kirkland, which will wrap up the first round of 8 sessions where we do this training. It's open to everybody in the BKCO network. And for those of you who are up in Bellingham or in Olympia and a little bit further away, it will be accessible via Zoom. So I put this up here. here's the deal. When we relaunch, we're going to have 30 more spots that open up. If you use the promo code, it's only $99, and that $99 is the cost of the materials, the workbook, the role play cards, things that you can only get through Exactly What to Say. But I'm not charging actually for the training. This is going to fill up really fast. That's why I'm giving you the link now. But most importantly, I just want to go back to Sydney's morning role plays. Guys, this would be a really, really great use of your time, and it's an amazing start to the day. So, all right, guys, change your words, change your world. Thank you so much for attending the BKCO network meeting today. We put a lot of energy into making these quality for you guys. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Envoy. And thank you, David. Everybody go out and have a fantastic week.